arrive in Liverpool is by sea, sailing through the western approaches and following the Mersey estuary until Liverpool's majestic waterfront rises up before you. I prefer to drive. Whenever I've got somebody with me who's never been to Liverpool before, there's two ways I can bring them into the city. There's the, my God, I didn't know it was so prosperous looking. This is like bits of Cheltenham tour, via the wealthy southern suburbs and over the beautiful Runcorn Bridge. Or there's the crime and deprivation, are you sure the doors are locked tour, via the northern inner city and the M62. And now there's the bloody hell, what's that tour, as Liverpool rebuilds itself to match its status as European Capital of Culture 2008. All these different views of the city are as true as each other, because Liverpool has always been a place where extremes have lived side by side. It's had a roller coaster ride of a history. At one point, it was the second city of the empire, with wealth and buildings that easily rivaled London. At another, it was the ultimate sink city, crippled by strikes and unemployment. To me, Liverpool, more than anywhere else, has gone through extreme changes of image. And in this programme, I want to explore how its current incarnation as European Capital of Culture is just the latest in a long history of reinvention and regeneration. One thing you can say about Liverpool is that it's always had big ideas about itself. Throughout the last 2 centuries, the city of Liverpool has always seemed to be chasing some chimera, some dream of how it could be the perfect city. When I was very young, it was a solid but thriving port with the odd gigantic Greek temple dotted about. But then came the fantasy of creating a modernist utopia out of concrete and glass, a sort of Brasilia or Canberra on the banks of the Mersey. When that failed, it reinvented itself as a kind of revolutionary bastion, Leningrad or Havana or Ramallah, but still on the banks of the Mersey. With this obsessive changing of its clothes, for the last 2 centuries, the city's acted as if the police were after it. And although I didn't want to arrive in Liverpool via the Mersey, when trying to find the true identity of the city, you have to turn to the river. Because Liverpool owes its very existence to the muddy and turbulent Mersey. Frank Walker, the Deputy Harbour Master, has been going to sea since he was 16. His life has been shaped by this river. Was it always like a powerful moment when you saw the pierhead?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. It's still iconic. Sadly, now a lot of the view from the river is now obscured by the new buildings. But it's still a very powerful sight for anyone, particularly in the 60s when you were coming home. And it was that idea that when you got to the bar and the pilot came aboard and you were coming up the river, it was just fantastic.
And it's also, I suppose, something that defines Liverpool, because Manchester's not a port, really, is it?
No, it's not.
Yeah, Birmingham's not a port. And
no.
That's
what makes it different.
That's
what makes the people different.
Yeah. Even if they don't go to see themselves, they've absorbed something of that.
Absolutely. And there's hardly a family in Liverpool or in this area that hasn't had a relative that's been to sea at some time, because all the great liners came here. It's a very dynamic river with a 10.5-metre rise and fall in the tide on a big tide. Currents up to 7 or 8 knots in places.
Given all that, why is it still a port then?
We're geographically in the right place. Most of the trade that comes across the Atlantic comes via Liverpool. And it's always been that case, that the fortunes of the city of Liverpool have been directly linked to the port and the river.
Without the high-vis inflatable jacket, Frank could be a character out of a Conrad novel, with his love of the sea and eyes fixed on the distant shore. Clearly, I'm as guilty as the next person of romanticising Liverpool's history as a port. But its origins are far from romantic, because Liverpool was a city that was built on a dark and evil trade.
In Alcoholics Anonymous, they say you're only as sick as your secrets. And for a long time, Liverpool's dirty little secret was that the city was founded on the profits of slavery. Now, as with all families, when the secret comes out, people have different responses. Some deny it totally, some say it was no big thing, it didn't matter. Others feel guilty and want to make amends, and in Liverpool there's been talk of making apologies and changing street names. For instance, the Penny in Penny Lane was a noted slave trader.
Penny Lane, there is a barber showing photographs of every head.
In Nelson Mandela Lane, there is a barber with a photograph. Doesn't really work, does it?
Stop and say hello.
Street names might change and apologies be issued, but none of it alters the fact that a lot of Liverpool's early wealth was built on the profits of human traffic. In 1797, a Reverend Bagshaw visited Liverpool and wrote, "Throughout this large-built town, every brick is cemented to its fellow brick by the blood and sweat of Negroes." By 1800, Liverpool was England's main slaving port, and Liverpool merchants made wealthy by the trade were turning their town into a grand city. I love these Georgian terraces around Liverpool 8, but these distinctive streets were built on slaving money. However, just as Liverpool hit the big time, the rest of the country decided that maybe shipping your fellow human beings around the world in chains wasn't such a good idea. The self-interest of Liverpool merchants made them so out of step with the rest of the country that a well-known phrase grew up, that in English society, you were either men of humanity or men of Liverpool. So even back then, Liverpool had an image problem. It was seen as a destination where the pursuit of wealth outweighed any civilized or humane values.